Thanks so much for whether thank you so much for those of you who are here live, but I know this is going to be recorded, so thank you if you're watching this on record. What I wanted to do is dive straight into it today, but I guess just kind of one of the most important things that I'll talk to you today about is storytelling. So I guess, like, why am I here doing this session? I've been involved with the Tutors Association for quite a while. I was a past vice president. I'm just going to be back on the board again soon. And I started as an independent private tutor, built my business and actually sold part of it to the eTeach group in 2021. So I've been on quite a sort of crazy little journey myself. But one of the things that I always say to John, I'm so passionate about supporting is, making sure that as an industry, we're here for not just the corporates and the agencies, which obviously I have one of those now, but I still see myself as a professional private tutor as well as an agency owner. And so I think it's so important that we, put out content that's useful for everybody, basically. So I just wanted to draw your attention, a little bit of housekeeping. If everyone's okay to stay on mute, but if you have anything as we're going through, I've got my phone here so I can see the chat. So if you just want to make sure that you, if you want to contribute, this is definitely an interactive session, but I've actually created it so you can either be interactive yourself with a pad of paper or pen. So do grab one of those or something that's going to help you think. It's a very thinky session that we're going to do today. So just make sure that you've got anything that you might need. But do say hello in the chat if you're there, or if you have anything to contribute. That would be the best way as we're going through. And then if there's anything that anyone says in the chat that I think might be useful for everyone, if you feel comfortable, I'll ask you just to unmute, and then we can actually have quite a nice interactive session. But whether you're watching this online or in person, we'll hopefully make you go away from here with a lot to think about, but some actions, because I think that's the most important thing, isn't it? So I'm not a big fan of slides. So my slides are all pictures. Anyone that follows me on LinkedIn, I did actually put these pictures up last night, actually. And the big thing I hope that you go away from today is almost, it's taking time, isn't it, to reflect on our own business journey to where we've come. And I think the title of Professional Private Tutor to Tuition Business, I would argue that every professional private tutor is a tuition business. Now, lots of us, when we hear that word business, our mind springs straight away to the assumption of agency or having other tutors work for us. But I hope that at the end of today, I've maybe sort of shown you that a tuition business doesn't have to be scaled to an agency. It can also be you choosing to stay as a one-man band, if you like, but really maximizing your earning potential within that situation. It is something that when I look back at my journey, I sort of wonder, like, what if I'd just done that, and how would it be different for me today? So hi Shani and hi Joanne, thank you so much for being here in the chat as well. So the first thing I'm going to do is show you this picture and ask you the question, actually. So do jump into the chat. Why or how does this picture, why have I chosen this picture to start off our reflection of our business journey up to now and our plans for the future? What do you think this picture, what does it do for you? If you think about what you can see here, I can see people typing away. I always think it's kind of interesting because I don't want to sit here and tell you, you need to do this. There's plenty of business coaches. Someone thinks, Shani, it makes you think of cocktails. I'm interested to know how that then links into your business and your business growth. Maybe you do your best thinking after a couple of cocktails. Definitely, it's interesting. Now, for me, the big thing, the quote that I think always we should come back to and reflect. Oh yeah, Joanne, you said what's on the inside. Interesting. I like that. The inside, Andy's agreeing with you, actually. The inside of a business and its workings look different to the outside. I love that. Also, just think what these are. It's a passion fruit, right? So for me, I thought it was the best place to start with one of my favorite quotes, which is passion fuels the flame of innovation. And I just think that this is really important that we just take a moment in the craziness and the hecticness working in the education businesses. Um, Everything becomes about the children, right? Because that's why we're doing it. We want to see improvement. We want to, yeah, Vicky, your business is your passion, right? That was kind of where I was going with it in my brain. But I also love the idea of thinking about how what's inside your business is different to on the outside. Both those things I think are so important just for us to reflect on. What made you start your business? And I know that sounds like a real past question, and you sort of think, well, that's not really going to help me grow, but it really is. Because what I see a lot of in businesses that are trying to scale is they've almost detached themselves from why they went into the business in the first place. Now, I'm a big fan of storytelling. So I will give you one example where that doesn't quite ring true, or people sort of think, oh, but I started my business. Many of us started our business because we fell out of love with maybe classroom teaching. Or some of us may have had a point in our life where we just thought, if I don't do this now, sometimes that's the push to actually start your business. But that's not what I'm talking about here. Why? And in the chat, I'd love to know, what is your passion? And try not to give me a generic answer like tutoring, teaching. Obviously, I'm guessing you probably like that kind of thing, but dig deeper than that. Like, what really, really sets your heart on fire with your business? And while you guys are having, so Joanne, you've said making a difference. Can you dig even deeper than that? Making a difference to what? In what scenario? Which scenario is your, like, gives you, it sounds a little bit selfish, I guess, doesn't it? But again, Andy as well, connecting people with the right people in what scenario? You know, are you talking about in the city in finance companies? Are you talking about schools and parents matching them up? Are you talking about tutors? Be really specific. Shani, that's a great one. Children having a difficult time in school in the recent years, and tutoring can help them find their love for learning and achievement again. So I'm guessing that you like supporting maybe disadvantaged learners, which is very similar to lots of us, but really connecting with your passion. And just after this, session where you've really got some just thinking time, just taking 5 minutes and 10 minutes and thinking of the 5 most happiest moments in your business. And sometimes people jump to like a monetary thing, or sometimes people jump to like a almost like an artificial thing, but just moments where you just felt like in your flow and in your like your happy place. So my example of that is actually twofold. In my tutoring, it is definitely creative writing. And I think back to COVID and when I was doing these like creative writing sessions online, I just loved it. So for me, online creative writing teaching is like an absolute passion of mine. Now, it's not unfortunately something that in my role right this second, I'm doing a huge amount of, but it's definitely my passion. So in my future, I should definitely be thinking of ways that I can build that back in. Okay. Then we've got, so Joanne, I can see you're saying like those children that are not thriving in school and lack confidence and, starting to flourish, recognizing their progress with us. I love that. So a lot of us in the chat are actually saying that our passion is supporting maybe the students that just feel that they're not, maybe the school is not the right fit for them, or they're not quite getting what they need. And I love being a teacher on a child's team, and I think that's probably what I'm getting from a lot of people in the chat then. But just taking some time and just writing down those 5, or maybe you might have more than that, times in your tutoring business where you've just thought, oh my gosh, this is just, I could do this all day, every day. And then we're going to go on to the next little thing. Now, this is the next picture I'm going to show you. And in the chat, or if you're watching this on record, I just want you to think about how this picture might link to your journey up to now, and how you might have your journey into the future of your business. What springs to mind when you see this picture? How can you link this to your business past, your business present, or your business future? I'm just interested to know. What could be the lessons, the things that we could build out of this picture? Ever changing, Vicky, I love that. Sort of like an evolving of all the different colours. I like that a lot. Yeah, because businesses are ever changing. I guess if you look back at your business, you've probably seen almost different phases, different stages. And, you know, quite often there's a bit of struggle at the beginning, and you might be in your struggle phase. But that's okay, because you will eventually reach a different phase, like your growth phase, which is what I would say I'm in at the moment. But sometimes you have mini growth, then you plateau and you do some research development, then you do some more. Yeah, absolutely. Shani, I like that as well. Every day is different. Don't try and always think, oh, everything must be the same. Absolutely. One of the things that I want to draw your attention to with this picture is how the color differentiates the pen, right? So we can see they're exactly the same pens. And in tutoring, we're all tutors, right? We're all like the pen. But with these pens, as we look at them, they look a little bit different. But what we can do with the pen is we can tell a story, right? And your ability as a business owner and as a professional private tutor, your ability to tell stories is one of the most differentiating, unique aspects of you and your business. Your story is different to everybody else's, but the service that you provide may be similar. But how do people and how do you scaffold your target audience? We all hear like business coaching and business coaches, they talk about like niche down. What's your target audience? That's lovely, but that's quite an easy thing to do. My target audience is this. Now, I always say you need to go one step further. And so what I want you to do is think of, you will probably all have your target audience, right? The people that you know you can serve really, really well. Maybe that's a private school parent doing 11 plus. Maybe that's a school where they've got a child who's not attending school and they need some support with reintegration. Maybe that's an A-level student. Maybe that's a specific board of GCSE maths, for example. Your niche is just one part of your business. And actually, what I believe that we need to do more on, and the thing that I'd like, if you can remember one thing from today, is to go out and tell stories. But I think a lot of people get a blocker with that. In the chat, I'm sure, have you ever had that feeling where you've gone to like write something on, everyone thinks about telling stories on social media, for example. Have you ever got to social media and thought, I need to write something. I need to tell a story so that people know what I do, but I don't know what to write, right? We get this sort of overwhelming, a bit like our students do, this sort of fear, like of what if I don't know the story to tell properly? But the thing is, if you just tell stories regularly, you can begin to see which ones are engaged with. So which ones you tell to your friends, or how you introduce yourself at a party, or how you tell your neighbor next door what you do, or how you tell stories to your students to inspire them that don't worry about this blocker you're facing. If you can go away from today doing one thing to grow your business, I would really start to think about how you scaffold, as we all do as teachers, how you scaffold your audience with the stories you tell. So you almost might need to make a little plan of the stories that you'd want your audience to hear at the beginning of their first engagement with you. What story would you want them to tell that you feel gives them a sort of nice overview to what you do in your tuition business? And as independent tutors, we can all tell so many stories because we've got lived case studies, workable examples of the students that we've supported, right? So in the chat, as I'm talking and sort of maybe just giving you some guidance on then where you might go with these stories. Do you have a story or like a case study or a real like, this really highlights what I do and what I'm about? Um, and maybe that's the story that you need to tell first. And I'm not expecting in this short kind of hour, I'm not expecting you to just like plan out all your stories. But if this can just plant the seed for this week, this month, you know, we're going into sort of holiday season, just begin to think about collecting these stories together. Because if you can tell them in a clever way, a scaffolding way for your audience, that is going to bring you so much of the growth of people talking about you. It'll be the little hooks. I mean, if you're on LinkedIn, we always say, don't we, that people need to see your name on LinkedIn and think of three things, three words, word association effectively. Now, for a long time, I think when people would say to me, like they knew me for traveling tutoring, but actually I kind of didn't like that so much because that wasn't my passion. My passion was supporting autistic learners, but I knew it was okay because people had seen the stories. They engaged with those stories about me traveling, and that's fine. That's part of the journey. So sometimes you might have stories in your journey that are not so linked to the passion, the first picture that we had, but they're like helpful for other people to begin to know you as a person, to know where you come from, what's important for you, and how you help people most importantly. So just in the chat, do you have, you might, hopefully the chat's gone quite quiet, so I'm hoping that everyone's scribbling down little ideas of bullet points of stories that they might use. Have you all got ideas of stories that really show what you do and who you help? And I always call it like a little like story journal. I've got like a little notes section on my phone, and whenever I'm about, because you know sometimes just random things pop into your brain, and you're like, oh, I remember this story. That would be really great for this, and you can just note them down. And collections of stories as a professional private tutor are one of the most powerful marketing tools that you have. And you can present them in different ways, text-based, audio-based. You can, you know, make them into little videos, all sorts of things. Use pictures to then discuss them. But it's so important that you start to collect these stories if you're a professional private tutor and you're thinking of how you're going to grow your business, because that is, it's just really the, like, I'll give you an example. Yes, Shani, of course. So for example, one of my first ever clients, he was a home education student. His mum found me on Facebook, and he had a profile of PDA. This was my first ever student I supported with a diagnosed PDA profile. And PDA stands for pathological demand avoidance, and it's characterized by students feeling extreme anxiety when a demand is placed upon them. So like pick up your pen, or a non-verbal demand like expecting people to line up quietly and things like that at school. So he found he'd got to the point where unfortunately his school had said, we can't meet your needs anymore. And I home educated him for 3 years. And I eventually reintegrated him back into a school. And I cannot tell you the joy that I had when I spoke to him after school, his first day of school after 3 years. And I knew at that point, at points I never thought we were going to make it, but I knew that was my passion, going back to the first picture. And I knew that I didn't want to just be a generic tutor or an English tutor, or I loved creative writing, but my absolute passion in tutoring was reintegrating students that had fallen out of the system. And I managed to build them up using lots of different techniques, not just curriculum-based support, but also sort of wellness piece, to get them back into a school. So that's a story I tell very early on in parents sort of getting to know us or me as a tutor, because I think it really goes, it's almost like when you write a personal statement and you talk about why you're interested in the subject you go into. It's about engaging rather than just saying, I, if I didn't have a story to tell, I'd just say, I specialize in reintegrating pupils back into school, right? Now, that's great. It tells me what you do. But isn't it so much more engaging and so much more memorable to hear a story? So I think, Shani, what I would say is anything that you, as a professional private tutor, say, or think you're an expert in, or think you really want to do more of, my big task or my big sort of suggestion would be to begin to imagine someone asked you why, like imagine you had like a really inquisitive child, that just always asks you why. Try and always, anything you say, okay, I love creative writing. Why do I love creative writing? What's the story of why I love creative writing? Well, the reason I love creative writing tutoring is at school I really struggled with it. And then in year 10, I had this teacher and she taught it to me. And I remember exactly what she said. She said, Lucy, writing is just like following a recipe. You have to know the basics, and then you can create and innovate around the rules, the sort of, as you would with a recipe, for example. And just me saying I'm a creative writing tutor, it's not very, people don't engage with that. But when they then say, oh, like, this is why I'm a creative writing teacher. I remember when I had this teacher and she said this, and now I've built my own set of rules and recipes for creative writing that have literally turned students that say they hate writing into like being told by their teacher at school in independent schools, you are the best writer in this year. And that is what I have created based on that story. It's so much more engaging, isn't it? Rather than just being like, oh, I specialize in this. Look at these pens. They're all the same pen. But with each one of those pens, a different story can be told. And so that is one of the most powerful. If you're someone who's thinking about marketing activity, or how can I be on this social media, that social media, until you've got your stories right, don't worry about anything else. Focus on your stories, and then you use the social media channels to tell your stories with lots of different ways. And I'm always very happy if anyone's got further questions about this, because I know it's quite a lot. Do obviously reach out to me. LinkedIn is the best place to sort of ask questions and things. To the next picture in the chat, what do you think this picture represents about your business? Where do you think I'm going with this picture based on your tutoring business and its past, where you are at the present, and how we look to the future? I'm interested to see. A marathon, not a sprint. Yes, there are lots of, yes, absolutely. So running a business, I love that one, Vicky. Yeah, it is like running a marathon. It's not a sprint, isn't it? And that does link really nicely into where I was going with this as well. Sustainability was what I was thinking. Joanne, yeah, pace yourself. Don't burn out. Absolutely. How many of us here, just in the chat, have you had a period of burnout with your business? I mean, absolutely. If you haven't, I want to know what your secret is, because we're all passionate individuals, especially us educators, and we do sprint sometimes, don't we? And then we get those periods where we think, yeah, I've overdone it here. And yeah, you have to just almost step back for a bit. And I think then going back to my first picture, re-engaging with your passion helps you overcome those periods of burnout. But ideally, what we want to do is obviously not burn out. So how can we do that? And for me, one of the key things to think about is the sustainable business growth. Now, everyone thinks with the word sustainability that we're talking about being green. But yeah, we are. But look at all those frantic legs that we can imagine if this was a video and we press play, would be all running in different ways, different styles. Everyone's so different. And we have our own, and going back to what a few people were saying in the picture of the passion fruit at the beginning, what's inside is again very different from what people see on the outside, right? So we have to really engage with what is possible for us as a business owner, And I think one of the most damaging things as an independent private tutor, as you look out into the worlds of social media, is this overwhelm. You're seeing the little shiny snippets, all the success stories, all the testimonials, all the marketing effectively in this echo chamber of tutors. And that can be really, really hard sometimes, can't it? Because you're seeing someone's chapter 20 and you could be on chapter 1, and then you're judging your chapter 1 based on where someone is who's been doing it for a lot longer than you. And I would say that that is not a good idea. It's obviously important to engage and connect, and the Tutors Association is brilliant for that, with some of the meetups and things like that, the conferences, the awards. It's a really lovely time to come together and network with other tutors. But I'd really, really advise for sustainable business growth that you actually look to widen your network. Vicky, you said that's me, you want it all now. Having been there, Vicky, I too am still like that. I want everything now. My brain works super, super quick, and I'm like, now, everything. But actually, what I've seen is that sometimes really thinking and visualizing what you want for the future. And I'll give you an example. When I joined eTeach, when I sold a little part of Education Boutique to eTeach, I was doing it because my struggle was the candidates, right? And I was getting some big contracts that were like, oh yeah, we need 20 tutors to start next week. And I just didn't have the manpower to do that. So I'd thought about how I was going to find something that could enable me to have this large database of tutors to enable me to help more children. But I remember starting on the first day and everything was like, I personally was like, I want to meet everyone. I want to do this. I want to do that. After a month, I was absolutely burnt out because it's such a big thing. And now I look at how we do our planning meetings and how we engage and reflect, and just seeing it from a slightly corporate side of how we build in those reflection sort of periods into the growth of the company. Old me would have been like, yeah, we don't need to reflect, we need to just keep going, keep innovating. And I think everyone thinks of growth as innovation or a new product or a new service or a new client. But one thing, probably a story that I tell quite a few of the guys when they come and work in my team, is sometimes if you're looking for a new tutor, we look at, going out cold, but actually it can be more looking inside and thinking, actually, we've got some really good tutors here. Let me speak to them and see if they know anyone, rather than always thinking new. Growth doesn't have to be about finding new things. And this is one thing that I think links so well to independent private tutors. You can maximize. A lot of people think for independent private tutors, if you're full, what do I do now? I take on another tutor. Now, obviously, John's doing another session on Thursday this week about the sort of the legal side of, because there's been huge changes for all of us in terms of agencies and running tuition businesses and things like that. But it's really, really not as easy as it used to be, firstly. And secondly, I really, really believe that as a sole trader, as an independent private tutor that's a sole trader, I think that something that's very interesting for sustainable business growth is, you don't pay VAT. So if you are looking to the future, you could be earning upwards of £120,000 a year, and you wouldn't have to pay any VAT. Whereas a lot of people think, I want to start a business, I'm going to be a limited company. And then as soon as you take on, as soon as you're a limited company, you take on another tutor, because that's the scaling, agency kind of idea, you'd pay VAT, which is 20% of your turnover. Now, I would say that at the point where you're really thinking about sustainable business growth is, do you see yourself wanting that sort of agency business, with lots of other tutors working for you? Or would you go down the real consultant expert in your area, in which case being a sole trader is going to have lots of positives, right? Um, but obviously, the only negative thing about the sole trader is that you obviously would sometimes, if you were thinking long term, it would be very difficult to value a sole trader's business. So, like I did, I sold part of my company. I was only able to do that because I was a limited company. So there are little things to consider, and it's not something we're going to delve into really deeply in this session. But again, if there's ever anything, any questions that you have about the sort of the way of structuring your company, that's again something else that the Tutors Association is very well placed to support you with. And I know John is an absolute expert in all of the legal stuff. And there's lots of us out there who have done lots of different things who can talk about our own case studies personally. So moving on to the next one, what do you think this picture here is trying to elicit in your thinking in terms of your business growth and how you can maximize from being a professional private tutor to thinking about how you're going to grow? Just wait and see what people say in the chat. And if you're watching this on record, you can also just have a little bit of a think. What is this inspiring us to think of in our business growth journey? Nice. Yeah. What's the gap in the market you could fill? Definitely. Love that, Vicky. Absolutely. Yeah, exactly. And it's all about thinking about, so these blue little people around the outside, these are your, I mean, I'm a big fan of not thinking about the word competitors, but technically they're other services close to you who are doing a similar thing to what you do, offering a similar service to what you offer. Now, remember, they can't tell the same stories as you, but their product, the actual service that they're offering does a similar job. So, firstly, I don't think we do this enough. And I definitely didn't do this enough. When I was an independent private tutor, I definitely didn't do market analysis. Now, that sounds very corporate, but effectively going on Facebook, going on LinkedIn, more Facebook actually, to be honest with you, and looking at other people doing a similar thing in your area. Now, that's not because you want to try and price them out of the market or compete with them, but it's really important to see what other people in your space are doing. Now, not just to, see what they're doing and worry about it and think, oh gosh, they're doing much more than me, but just so that if you don't collect the data, how will you ever spot the gaps? Or how will you ever spot the partnership opportunities? You might see a local maths tutor to you, for example, if you're a maths tutor, or another online maths tutor who works in a similar way to you. And there might be something that you could do to boost your personal profile, professional profile of both of you, like a joint webinar. Or it might be that you use things like the Tutors Association, Qualified Tutor, like all of these different sort of things that are out there. It might be that you use them to gather market analysis and see what other people are doing. And when you gather that information, you can begin to, not necessarily doing a formal one, but strengths. What are the strengths? What are the things you look at in someone else's service and think, I like that? What are the weaknesses? What do you think as a sort of a lay person, an outside eye on that other person's business? What do you think are their weaknesses? And then you can self-reflect and think, am I, do I think I've also done that? What are the opportunities? As we said, it might not be opportunities for being differentiating yourself. It might be opportunities for partnerships as well. And I think that as you look to grow as an independent private tutor, partnerships are so important. So as you're thinking about this now, who are your strategic partners? Do you have any strategic partners? And remember, this does not have to be people in the sector, in the industry. This can be, well, totally different. Let me give you an example. I was for a long time doing some networking with out of the education sector businesses. It's something I felt very important, just to not be in this sort of just an echo chamber of tutors. You know, I wanted to see what other business owners were doing. I wanted to sort of see what they, what other things. Oh, Shani, you've started to work with foster children through the local council. So I'm guessing you've got some sort of strategic partners with care homes and things for children's care places. That's amazing. That's a brilliant strategic partner. And that is, if you increase the awareness of your service and how you work with them, often those care homes would be advocating to the local authorities and councils to say, oh, we'd like to work with this person when the packages of support are being put in place. So that's a brilliant one. It could be that you think of things like, I'll give you an example for my business. Something that I didn't think of for a long time was occupational therapists. Now, they are often the ones that, for the students that we aim to support with the out of school, school avoidant sort of students, they often are having their OT reports, and the occupational therapists at the end write their recommendations for how certain things need to be taught to them, or how say phonics, for example, is going to be scaffolded for this student. And I found that if they knew about our service, they would almost like write the recommendations as if they were going to then be sent to us. And that really, really impacted the amount of referrals that we received from a couple of local authorities. So there's also like financial planners, people who do like wealth management and things. Often they are supporting families, right, with who might have problems with children, who might have special educational needs or be out of school. And again, it's just people that are going to be supporting those families and that can see these issues that might occur and can refer you on. So again, even now, if you've got a few quick ideas that you might like to jot down, do it. But also just give yourself time, again, 5-10 minutes, or as you're like driving somewhere in the car, just think about who, and it goes back to knowing, your main clients, who you're really looking to work with, but who do you think they engage with regularly, who might be able to make recommendations to you, and try and sort of reverse engineer it that way. Think about when students come to you, what other activities they're doing. Maybe there's other sort of sports clubs and things that you could work with in terms of partnerships. There's so many opportunities. So it's not just like a one size fits all, definitely, because your stories will also impact how you can partner up with other businesses. But yeah, it's again a really important thing to do as an independent private tutor, to not only maximize your earning potential, but also extend your support network as well. Because we all know that at some points, being an independent private tutor can seem a little bit lonely sometimes, because you're always, with a student, and then it's you're doing it. If you come from the classroom, it can seem quite different. So extending these partnerships can be a great way to start to network and socialize with other people who are also running their own small business. And that's a very positive thing for your own support network too. So because it's almost Christmas, I had to have a sort of Christmassy holiday style photo in here. In the chat, guys, how do you think this picture relates to your business growth as a professional private tutor? I'm very interested to hear about what you think about this one, because it's intentionally vague, but I have got a good point for it. So let's just see what we've got. Don't lose your sparkle, Joanne. Love it. I love it so much. Never lose your sparkle. Always re-engage with your passion. If you're ever having those dull moments, always try and go back to that passion fruit. Think of what makes you sparkle. Do activities that fill you with joy so that you can go out and fill your students with joy. Yes, absolutely. I love that one. Anyone else? Um, that's a really nice one. Growth is spiky. Oh, I love that one. It totally is, isn't it? It's like, you've got bits of growth, you've got plateaus, you've got little what you might think of being going backwards in certain things, but you might be innovating in other areas. Spikiness, definitely. Always recharge your batteries. I love that as well. So make sure you give yourself time. Lots of well-being messages here, absolutely. I love that. I have another point to make for it. And this is actually linking to your finances, because I know as teachers, we don't like talking about finances and the money side of our business. It's almost like, oh, I had to have almost like therapy to work out how my issues of talking about money, because I just in my head thought money, education, it's just a little bit vulgar, isn't it, sometimes? And we do struggle with that as an education profession. But one of the things that I think is so important, and one of the things, probably the thing actually, that I wish someone had said to me, or actually they probably did say to me, but I wasn't ready to receive it. Sometimes people tell us stuff at different points in our journey and we're just not ready to receive them. Is get to know your finances. If you don't, you will always be in the dark and your growth will struggle. And just like Christmas lights, we get them out once a year, we untangle them, and then we put them on the tree. And that's what we do as self-employed, like sole traders. We put all of our finances kind of like, and I know there's probably a few of you on here that are probably better than this, but this is what I certainly did to begin with. I'd hide everything all year. And then I'd sort of have this mad dash panic where I'd untangle everything. I'd put it all into a nice Excel document. I'd send it all to an accountant once I started using an accountant. And then it would be all nice and shiny. And then I'd put it away again. And I wouldn't look at it until next year. That's a big mistake, because to grow in your company, you have to understand your profit margins, your and I know you might be sitting here thinking, Lucy, I've only got one one product, if you like, which is my one-to-one tutoring. I'm going to come on to that in a second. But to grow, you need to get a handle at least quarterly. So every 3 months, you should be putting a little bit of time in your diary to just keep in contact with your finances. And if you can do it more regularly, I know some people do like little invoicing afternoons every week or whatever, but wherever you are in your journey and whatever your workflow looks like with things like the money, it's so important to keep a handle on it, because to grow, you can't be doing it every year. Because in a year, you look back on it and you're like, oh gosh, okay, well, okay, I didn't grow that year. You can't grow like that. Now, this is probably the only picture that I'm not going to ask for what you think of, because this is an important one, and I just want to get this through to you guys now. This is your levels of products. Now, just in the chat, guys, what is your most expensive product that you sell, or service, whatever you like the words wise? I'm guessing for a lot of you, it will be your one-to-one time, your one-to-one tutoring. And for some of you, you might be thinking, yeah, I mean, that's my only service, right? And that's a big mistake, because when you have a business, and I'm talking now as if you're never going to take on another tutor, if you're just going to stay as you. But equally, this also works for if you do have a business as well, with other tutors. If the only service you offer is your one-to-one time, the only way you can grow is by doing more work or charging more. Okay? Kind of simple to understand. Now, what I'm going to say is that your one-to-one time, your tutoring should be your amber, should be your middle product. Okay. Beneath that, the green product, this needs to be your entry level product. And I call this really simply, imagine you had a waiting list. How would you monetize your waiting list? What could you sell to your waiting list that would sort of scaffold them before maybe getting a slot with you? Is there anything that you could do? Even if everyone on your waiting list paid you £1, that's £1 more than you had before. So how could you make a little bit of money from the people who are interested in what you do, but not ready to buy one-to-one or not able to afford because it's cost of living crisis? Like we know that is going to happen more and more frequently now. So how can you support people that either can't afford or aren't ready to quite buy your service, your amber service, your one-to-one service right now? And that's a very personal one. So I'll give you an example. I do some little masterclasses in the holidays. I do like creative writing ones, links back to my passion at the beginning. It's something that I find really easy to do. I hardly have to do any practice for it. I've got all everything sorted. So when I put them on, it's like, a few new scenarios and off I go, and people really like them. But what I actually did was then recorded some for people that maybe couldn't attend in the holidays, for example. But that was just because it was my passion. So it might be that you're, whatever it is, you just have to ask yourself the question, what would my waiting list need to scaffold them either in the support that you offer? If it is just like a subject, that's kind of a bit nicer for you to create something. But how could you support people? And it doesn't have to be with teaching. It could be supporting parents. It could be all these different things. But ask yourself the question, what could be your entry level product, making then your one-to-one tutoring your middle price, right? Then some of you might be thinking, what's the red product? Does anyone have any idea? What should be above your one-to-one tutoring? Some of you might, I'm looking at people here in the chat, some of you might have a product that's above your one-to-one tutoring in cost. What I'm interested to know, your specialism relating to you. Yeah, Joanne, can you give me an example? Is that something that you do? Like what would your product be that's above your one-to-one? School CPD, Vicky, that's an amazing one. Yeah, so that is, we all know school CPD, upwards of £350 for a half day. Sometimes, if you're doing a whole day, different things, but it really is. That's a lot more than your hourly rate for a lot of people. Passive income. So I would say, Julie, that passive income would be your green. That's your entry level stuff. Passive is not going to be your most expensive product. It could generate more, in the future for you, definitely, but this should be a really bespoke service. So this is where you need to think with your consultancy hat on. What are you a specialist in? What are you going to be able to provide for a group of people? And it could be parents, it could be schools and educators, it could be students, it could be career guidance, where you make a big package and it's more than your hourly rate, but it's sort of other things included, where you do sort of maybe psychometric testing and you do lots of you use different tools. It might be that you're a 11 plus tutor. It might be that you do a sort of assessment, interview, practice kind of bespoke one-off purchase where people aren't going to keep coming back and buying that. It's maybe a one-time thing, so therefore you can make the price a lot more. So that is something that is going to take your time, but the reward is even greater for you in a monetary value than your one-to-one tutoring. Now, if you look at your business right now and you think, I've just got an amber, I've just got my one-to-one, a really simple activity, the first thing I would actually suggest is add your red product, your high value, because What that will do is it will actually, once you start marketing that, it will make your one-to-one price look a very good price, obviously, because people relatively correlate the sort of the two. But also, it makes you look like you're coming from a place of authority, and your consultancy mindset means that if you ever have a parent who says, "Oh, I'm not sure I want to pay that," you politely and nicely say, no problem at all, that's absolutely fine. Good luck with everything you do. And then in the future, maybe you'd say, okay, no problem. You can't access, you don't want to access this level. But do you know I've got this other product which you can just purchase online and use at your own sort of in your own time. So there's so many ways that once you have these three levels, it enables you more as a business owner to feel that you're not having to turn people down because of price. And although it's a little bit clunky, I think, or sticky sometimes when you sort of think, oh, I'm having a really expensive price and maybe that doesn't sit with you so well. Once you've got the three tiers, no matter who comes in, you will have a product to help them with. And that's a lovely position as an educator, as an independent private tutor, to be in. And that is business growth. So I'm not going to sit here and say to you that you definitely need to start an agency and you definitely need to take on more and more tutors. That's one way. In a way, that's almost like, not the lazy way, that's the wrong of saying, but it's like the way everyone just assumes that you'd grow. This way is a lot more personal and is a lot more you are in control. And as I say, when I look back at my sort of decisions, I do feel that I went down the agency route because I was another one of those tutors that just thought, oh, that's how you grow, because that's sort of the evidence and the sort of experience that was out there that was sort of telling me that you want to grow, you get people to work with you. But actually, I'm here to sort of say, just look inside, back to that picture of the passion fruit at the beginning. Look inside and think about what really works best for you and your business, because that's what's going to give you the best and the most kind of sustainable and enjoyable business growth. So what I wanted to just do now is just see if there's any questions from anyone. And then if there's not, I've just got one last little activity that people can go away and do. So what kind of red products do you offer as an agency? That's a really good question, Shani. So basically, I would say that with a red product, it's the consultancy level. So it's the piece where you go into like consultancy for local authorities. I do EHCP consultancy, for example. We have tutors that we actually we don't just place tutors now, we place our tutors as consultants as well in SEN services. So it could be that a local authority has a real need for a few specific cases that they need someone to just purchase to come in, sort them all out, and then that's a consultancy package. We do lots of consultancy. So for me, that would be that. We also do like on the sort of parent funded side of things, because we are more to the school funded. But from the parent funded side, we do say like little 11 plus sort of booster sessions, like where it's like a whole day of activities with different tutors, where someone comes and does interviews, but they book it as a whole day and the people come to their house, for example. So that is based on an overall package that's slightly more than what the individual hours would cost if they were just providing it as a, if they were just hiring a private tutor. They're buying the sort of the package and the sort of consultancy that comes around with that, and a few of the other little green products that are thrown into the red product to add a bit of extra value as well. Does that answer your question, Shani? Anyone else? If anyone else has got any questions, you're more than welcome to ask. What I thought I would just do as well is just leave you with this. I want you to envisage, this is one of the most powerful things that me and my team do on a weekly basis. We envisage and think about our biggest barriers, the barriers that are stopping us doing something in our business. Now, I'll give you the story that I'll tell you is when I was at the point of thinking about how I was going to grow my business because I was winning big contracts, but I wasn't able to staff them. That was my big barrier. You know, it meant I wasn't going to be able to grow to a level that I felt like we could, you know, if I just fix this one thing. So I'm sure lots of you in your business right now might also be having certain sticky kind of challenges that you're struggling with. Another one actually is that we work profoundly with local authorities and schools, and the local authorities pay with incredibly long payment terms. So that is a struggle as a small business. Now it's sort of okay, but when we were really small, if a local authority didn't pay, we'd be paying the tutors like so much earlier than we actually got the money, and that was really difficult from a cash flow point of view. So I want you to envisage those difficulties. I want you to write them down. I want you to think about them and engaging with them, writing them down first of all, and asking yourself, is that really the problem? Because sometimes we assess a problem is a different thing. And then when we write down all the problems, we sort of go, actually, that one's not so bad. That one's not so bad either. Actually, that one there is the big one. So we do this sort of like problem like decision tree, if you like. And once you've done that problem decision tree, you have to try and get rid of at least sort of 80% of the things that you think, actually, that's not the biggest problem right now. And it will help you come to the point of really being able to identify that is something that I need to do. Then you have to envisage, what could you do? What would help you? And this was the point where I was thinking, what would help me find tutors quicker? And I was like, I need a big database. And I was like, okay, so I can go purchase a big database, but that's expensive, you know? And then I was thinking, okay, so who has a big database? And I started doing some research, market research, back to that picture there. I was doing research about who could solve my problem. And I actually came across that eTeach, very, very large recruitment company, were next door to me in my offices. So like, that is so weird, you know, like that's a bit of a strange thing. And then we started speaking, and then that was how it opened the doors, and they actually said, look, we actually were thinking of getting into tutoring. Would it be possible to buy part of the company? And that's how we did it. So it's really, really about this point here, that sometimes the challenges lead to the biggest breakthroughs. So if you're struggling with something, particularly in your business at the moment, take time to really delve deep into it, because at that point where you really nail into it, that can be where the biggest changes and innovations can happen. And it's a really amazing thing. And linking back to that connections, making connections, thinking about strategic partners, you just never know what's going to come out of a conversation with someone who's out of the industry. So I always think that's really good. Joanne, you said, what's the best way to approach local authorities with your services? And that's a really great question. Loads of people think, okay, I'm just going to approach them, like, you know, and it goes back to the pens. So there's loads of different companies that can work with local authorities, right? It's about the stories you tell. So you need actually people to tell your story to the local authority on your behalf. So the local authority then come to you and say, hey, I hear you, you helped someone else in this situation. I've got this student. So again, it links back to the telling stories. Anytime you have a marketing, if you like, a question, just go back to the stories and how you can get them to those caseworkers, to those SEND officers, to the heads of SEN, and how you can position your story so that it gets into their brain and they'll remember you when they have a similar student. That would be my best sort of, advice. Foster parents. So Shani, you had a similar thing. So a foster parent heard about your business because they probably heard a story from someone else that you'd supported, and then they relayed that back to the local authority. It's the best way. And it really is exponential as well, because once you get to a certain point, I mean, we are now at the point where we work with 33 different local authorities at the moment, and the the hours, and because the case studies and the stories are really flowing now between those local authorities, we get sort of strange little inquiries that have come from the weirdest little conversations that just happen to have, sort of worked up the tree of a different local authority, and then we get asked to do the commissioning or the tendering for that one. So it's really amazing how these stories can grow and can help you grow your business. So that's kind of what I wanted to leave you on, really, guys, would be, I really thank you for your time, whether you're watching this online or whether you've been doing it in person. If you can go away from here just thinking about the stories you tell and how you use those stories, that is what, there's so many independent private tutors, in England, but no one has your ability to tell the stories about your business, your service, your expertise in the way that you can. And so putting time into collating those is absolutely key to business growth and everything. And as I was going to say, if I'll just stop sharing there. But if if you want any support with that, please do just reach out. I'm obviously on on the TTA board now, or when that gets all sort of sorted. But best place to find me if you have any questions particularly is LinkedIn. And I know that also the TTA, John, Sam, everybody are really, really useful, a great source of knowledge if you need any support as well. Thank you.